The cold arrives before the enemy does. It does not announce itself. It settles in quietly, slipping into breath and bone, turning every exhale into a pale cloud that disappears almost as soon as it forms. Snow drifts down through bare branches and shattered rooftops, softening edges, muting sound, making the world feel smaller and slower. Men wait beneath it. They wait in foxholes carved into frozen ground that resists every shovel stroke. They wait in cellars that smell of damp stone and smoke. They wait along roads that no longer lead anywhere. Rifles rest against stiff gloves. Fingers ache from the effort of staying warm. Not from fear alone. From endurance. Somewhere beyond the trees, the guns will begin again. This place is Bastogne. By December of 1944, the war in Europe feels like it is nearing its end. The Allied armies have crossed France. Paris has been freed. The German forces are retreating, pressed hard, running out of time and space. Many soldiers believe winter will slow the fighting. That Christmas might bring a pause. That belief lasts only until the forest explodes. Out of the Ardennes comes an offensive built on desperation and surprise. German armor pushes forward through fog and snow, using the weather as cover. Infantry moves fast behind it, slipping through gaps before anyone fully understands what is happening. Roads clog. Units are scattered. Messages fracture and vanish. The front bends. Then it breaks. What had been a quiet sector becomes chaos. Retreating vehicles choke narrow roads. Orders arrive too late to matter. Positions are abandoned without ceremony. And in the middle of this confusion sits a small Belgian town where 7 roads meet. Bastogne is not large. It is not famous. But in winter, roads matter more than names. Whoever holds this crossroads controls movement through the region. Supplies. Reinforcements. Armor. So the order is given quickly. The 101st Airborne Division is pulled from rest and rushed forward by truck. Many of its men arrive without proper winter clothing. Some without enough ammunition. They expect a temporary mission. A delay. A holding action. They do not expect to be surrounded. They take positions wherever they can. Shallow foxholes in frozen fields. Stone houses converted into strongpoints. Machine guns set behind walls thick enough to stop shrapnel. Aid stations improvised in basements with little light and less heat. They are paratroopers, trained to fall from the sky into chaos. This time, there is no jump. Only cold ground and tightening pressure. The enemy does not rush Bastogne at first. It moves around it. Villages fall one by one. Roads are cut. Patrols disappear. Runners fail to return. The sound of artillery grows closer, more deliberate, as if the town itself is being measured. By the time the Americans fully grasp what is happening, the ring is already forming. Then the shelling begins. Artillery crashes down without pause. Trees splinter and burst. Roofs collapse inward. Streets fill with rubble and smoke. The wounded arrive faster than they can be treated, carried on stretchers or dragged through snow, leaving dark trails behind them. There is not enough of anything. Bandages are reused. Morphine is rationed. Surgeons work until their hands shake, then work some more. The dead are moved aside quietly, respectfully, to make room for the living. The cold becomes its own enemy. Weapons jam. Fingers lose feeling. Men wake to find their boots frozen solid. Frostbite spreads without drama, stealing toes and fingers while men focus on holding their ground. Food grows scarce. Meals become fragments stretched across a day. Coffee disappears. Cigarettes are broken in half and shared without words. And still, the line holds. German probes test the perimeter. Small attacks at first. Then heavier ones. Infantry advances under covering fire. Tanks grind forward through snow and smoke, engines echoing through the trees. Anti-tank guns fire until barrels glow. Bazooka teams wait in silence, letting armor come close enough to hear. Some shots stop steel. Others do not. Positions fall and are retaken. Houses change hands. Men fight room to room, stairwell to stairwell, sometimes with rifles, sometimes with grenades, sometimes with nothing but determination. Above it all, the sky remains sealed shut. Clouds hang low, grounding Allied aircraft. No supplies fall. No relief breaks through. Radios crackle, then fall silent. Bastogne becomes an island. Inside the encirclement, the men of the 101st understand something with painful clarity. No one is coming yet. They were not sent here to win a great battle. They were sent here to hold. And holding, in this place, against this pressure, will demand more than anyone expected to give. The snow keeps falling. The guns keep firing. and Bastonia closes around the men inside it, preparing to test just how much a human being can endure. The encirclement does not arrive all at once. It tightens the way winter tightens its grip on a man who has stayed outside too long. Quietly. Gradually. Almost politely. One road disappears. Then another. A route that was open at dawn becomes enemy ground by nightfall. A message sent out does not come back. Inside Bastonia, the map does not change. The world does. The wounded begin to arrive in greater numbers. At first it feels manageable. A steady flow. Stretchers carried in from the perimeter, boots crunching on snow, breath rising in quick clouds. But soon the flow becomes constant. Men with shattered legs. Men burned by explosions. Men so cold they cannot stop shaking even after the bleeding is slowed. Basements turn into hospitals. Lanterns cast weak yellow light over stone walls and crowded floors. Surgeons kneel, crouch, bend over bodies for hours at a time. There is no time for questions. Clothing is cut away. Blood freezes on the edges of bandages. Hands grow stiff, but they keep working because stopping is not an option. Above them, artillery finds a rhythm. Shells fall in patterns now. Roads. Intersections. Suspected command posts. Each impact sends dust and frost raining down from beams overhead. Men learn to recognize distance by sound alone. A dull thud means survival. A sharp crack means someone nearby will not see morning. Then comes the sound everyone fears most. Tanks. Not yet visible. Only audible. A low, rolling vibration carried through frozen ground. It settles in the stomach, heavy and unmistakable. Tanks mean the enemy is done testing. The attacks grow sharper. Infantry advances under smoke and fire, moving carefully, using the terrain, using darkness. American machine guns answer with short, controlled bursts. Riflemen fire deliberately, conserving ammunition the way a man conserves breath in cold air. The cold stretches everything. Time slows. Minutes feel long. Hours feel endless. A man can sit motionless for so long that standing becomes an act of will. He can lose feeling in his feet and not notice until he tries to move. He can fall asleep for seconds and wake convinced hours have passed. Orders continue to come. Hold this road. Cover that gap. Maintain contact left and right. Maintaining contact becomes harder every day. Companies shrink. Platoons thin out. Squads become clusters of familiar voices in the dark. A man disappears and no one asks where he went, because the answer is usually written in the snow somewhere nearby. Leadership changes shape. Rank still matters, but presence matters more. A calm voice under fire. A figure standing when everyone else wants to stay low. Orders grow simpler, not because the situation is simple, but because simplicity is the only thing the exhausted mind can hold. Hold. Wait. Fire when you see them. The cold strips life down to essentials. Food becomes rare. A can shared between men without discussion. A biscuit softened with melted snow. Men chew slowly, not for taste, but to make it last. Cigarettes are broken, traded, guarded carefully. Sleep is stolen in fragments. A few minutes here. A few there. Never enough to rest. Just enough to keep moving. Fear changes too. It sharpens. It loses its noise. It becomes quiet and focused, a constant awareness of where cover ends and danger begins. There is no room left for panic. Panic wastes energy. The mind looks for something solid to hold on to. Then, through the snow, something unexpected appears. A small group of German soldiers approaches under a white flag. The sight is strange in this landscape of smoke and shattered trees. They bring a message. A demand. A carefully worded offer wrapped in certainty. They state the obvious. That Bastonia is surrounded. That resistance is futile. That surrender would be merciful. The message is delivered. And the reply comes back without hesitation. It is short. Plain. Almost casual. No. The word spreads through the perimeter faster than any order. It does not bring warmth. It does not bring food or ammunition. But it brings something else. Something that matters just as much. Clarity. From that moment on, there is no debate. No lingering question about how this ends. Whatever happens, it will happen here. The German response is immediate. Artillery intensifies. Attacks come harder, closer together. Infantry presses in waves, testing every weak point. Tanks push forward again, grinding through snow and debris, gun barrels swinging toward muzzle flashes. American positions bend. Some nearly break. A roadblock holds through the night, then collapses at dawn. A squad fights its way out of a stand of trees after being cut off, leaving bodies behind in the snow. A machine gun falls silent when its last belt runs dry, and the crew takes up rifles instead. The fighting grows close. Personal. Men fire from doorways and windows, from behind collapsed walls and burned out vehicles. Grenades echo through empty houses. Shouts mix with gunfire. Commands blur into instinct. Blood looks almost black against the snow. And still, Bastonia does not fall. Because the men inside it are no longer fighting for victory. They are fighting to exist. They have stopped thinking in days and started thinking in moments. In minutes. In the next assault. In the next sound in the dark. The sky remains closed. No aircraft. No supplies. No sign of relief. But the line holds. Not because it is strong. Because it refuses to give way. And as the pressure mounts, as the enemy leans harder against the frozen perimeter, something deeper begins to form inside Bastonia. A stubbornness that no longer depends on hope. Only on resolve. By the third week of December, time inside Bastonia loses its shape. Day and night blur beneath the same low sky. Light never truly brightens, and darkness never fully settles. The cold remains constant, pressing in from every direction, tightening its grip whenever the wind rises, easing only slightly when it falls still. The perimeter still exists. But it exists the way a tired man stays on his feet. By will alone. Every unit along the line carries the same quiet knowledge. What began as a holding action has become something else entirely. There is no schedule anymore. No clear sense of how long this can last. Only the understanding that each hour survived is a small victory, and each hour lost could be the one that breaks everything. Ammunition is rationed with almost religious care. Machine guns fire in short, disciplined bursts. Mortar crews count rounds the way a man counts heartbeats. Riflemen check pockets and bandoliers repeatedly, not because they expect more bullets to appear, but because knowing exactly how many remain gives the illusion of control. Food is no longer planned. It is found. A crate uncovered beneath rubble. A can pulled from a fallen pack. A handful of rations divided without ceremony. Men eat slowly, not for comfort, but to make the moment last. Hunger becomes a constant presence, dull and familiar, like the cold. The wounded continue to arrive. Basements, cellars, schoolrooms, any space with walls becomes an aid station. The air inside is thick with smoke and the smell of blood. Lanterns sway slightly with each nearby impact. Men lie shoulder to shoulder, staring at ceilings, listening to shells tear the town apart above them. The doctors do not stop. They work because there is another man waiting. Because stopping would mean acknowledging how little they have left to give. Outside, the enemy adapts. The Germans no longer rush blindly. They probe, withdraw, then strike again somewhere else. They slip infantry close under cover of darkness, trying to fracture the line from within. Artillery chews at the perimeter, returning again and again to the same points, wearing them down through repetition. There are moments when the line nearly dissolves. A village on the edge of the defense is hit hard. Houses fall one by one. The defenders are pushed back through streets that no longer have names. A gap opens, thin but dangerous. Fear moves faster than orders. Someone shouts that the enemy is through. Someone else says tanks are coming down the road. For a moment, the entire perimeter feels as if it might unravel. Then a runner arrives. Breathless. Pale. Carrying a message folded until the paper is soft. An officer steps forward, visible to everyone, pointing, directing, steady. Squads move back into the ruins. Men who thought they had nothing left find something more. They push forward again. They fight for basements and stairwells. For corners of buildings reduced to skeletons. For ground that offers no shelter and no comfort. When it is over, the line still exists. Thinner. Bleeding. But unbroken. The greatest battles now happen inside the mind. A man can withstand hours of shelling, then break when his hands will not light a cigarette. Another can hold steady through an assault, then collapse when he hears a familiar voice calling his name in the dark and cannot reach it. Exhaustion distorts reality. Shadows move. Sounds become voices. The mind, starved of sleep, fills the silence with what it fears most. Leadership becomes less about tactics and more about anchoring men to the present. A calm word. A hand on a shoulder. A reminder to breathe. The sky still refuses to open. Each morning arrives with the same gray ceiling. Each night falls with the same certainty that the cold will claim any man who lets it. Boots freeze. Blankets stiffen. Frost creeps along the edges of everything. Then, almost imperceptibly, the world shifts. The clouds thin. It is not dramatic. Not a sudden clearing. Just a subtle brightness behind the gray. A hint of blue that feels impossible. Men notice it the way a drowning man notices light through water. By the next morning, the change is undeniable. The sound comes first. Engines. Distant at first, then clearer. A familiar rhythm cutting through the cold air. Heads tilt upward across the perimeter. Men stand without thinking, exposing themselves, because this sound has lived in their minds for days. Then the aircraft appear. American planes cross the sky, and behind them parachutes bloom. White and colored shapes opening against the winter backdrop, drifting down slowly, almost gently. Supplies. Ammunition. Food. Medical gear. Plasma. Bandages. Men run for the drops as if chasing life itself. Some land in open fields under fire. Some drift into enemy lines. Some burst on impact. But enough reach American hands to matter. Weight returns to pockets. A mortar crew opens a crate and sees fresh rounds stacked neatly. A medic finds clean dressings, dry and usable. A hungry man eats and feels strength return, if only a little. It does not end the siege. But it changes the balance. Because Bastogne now knows it has not been forgotten. The Germans know it too. They respond with urgency. Artillery intensifies. Attacks sharpen. Tanks move again. Infantry presses harder, trying to break the pocket before relief arrives from the ground. The defenders answer with renewed fire. Machine guns speak again. Mortars thump. Bazookas wait with a little more certainty. The fighting remains savage, close, unforgiving. And through it all, another sensation begins to spread. Not a confirmed report. A feeling. A distant pressure beyond the ring. A low rumble that may be artillery, or maybe something else entirely. Something moving toward them. Men begin to listen differently now. Each pause becomes an opportunity to hear it. Each quiet moment is filled with expectation. Rumors circulate, but this time they carry weight. Bastogne is still surrounded. Still freezing. Still bleeding. But for the first time, the men inside can imagine the ring breaking. They brace themselves. For one more night. For one more assault. For one more hour that feels longer than a season. Because relief is not a miracle. It is something that must be earned, minute, by men who have already given almost everything. The sound does not arrive as an announcement. At first, it is only a sensation. A pressure in the air that does not belong to artillery. A vibration too steady, too heavy. Men notice it in the brief pauses between shell bursts, in the moments when the guns seem to inhale. They stop talking. They listen. Somewhere beyond the frozen perimeter of Bastogne, something large is moving. For the Germans, time has become the enemy. They know the sky has opened. They know supplies have fallen. They know American aircraft are flying again, and aircraft mean the balance is shifting. They also know what lies to the south. Armor. Fuel. Momentum. So they strike one last time. The final assaults come with violence and urgency. Artillery hammers the perimeter, tearing apart positions that have already been shattered more than once. Infantry pushes forward through smoke and falling snow, firing as they advance, slipping on ice and bodies alike. Tanks grind toward roadblocks rebuilt so many times they barely resemble defenses. Inside the lines, the defenders feel it immediately. This is different. There is desperation in it. A sense that the enemy is no longer testing or probing, but forcing an ending. The paratroopers answer with everything they have left. Machine guns chatter until barrels burn through gloves. Mortars fire until crews are deaf and hoarse. Riflemen expose themselves to get clear shots, knowing exactly what that risk means, but taking it anyway. Bazooka teams crawl forward through shell holes, waiting, counting heartbeats, letting tanks come so close the sound fills their chests. When they fire, the blast throws snow into the air and turns the world white for a moment. Some shots stop steel. Some do not. The fighting collapses into chaos. Units lose contact. Orders dissolve into instinct. Men fight where they stand because there is nowhere else to go. Houses become fortresses again. Basements become battlegrounds. Stairwells echo with gunfire and shouted warnings that blur into noise. In one sector, the line bends dangerously thin. Men fall back step by step, firing, turning, firing again, refusing to run because running is how panic spreads. An officer stands exposed, pointing and shouting until his voice breaks, because someone has to be seen standing. Nearby, a medic keeps moving forward, crawling and sliding, dragging wounded men back one by one, ignoring the shells because the work does not allow hesitation. The cold remains indifferent. It numbs pain. It freezes blood. It steals strength at the worst moments, when a trigger feels heavy, when legs hesitate for a fraction of a second too long. And still, the line holds. Not because it is strong. Because it refuses to disappear. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the German attacks lose their edge. Assaults stall. Tanks pull back and do not return with the same confidence. Infantry advances become shorter, more cautious. The defenders feel it before they understand it. The pressure eases. Then the sound changes again. This time there is no doubt. A deeper rumble. A rolling thunder that grows instead of fading. It comes not from the perimeter, but from beyond it. From the south. Word spreads without orders. Without confirmation. They are coming. Men climb from foxholes despite danger, staring through smoke and snow. They do not cheer. They are too tired. Too hollowed out for celebration. They only need to see it. American tanks break through the outer German positions, pushing forward with deliberate force. Infantry follows close behind. The ring around Bastogne cracks, then splits open. Relief has arrived. The moment is quiet. Men sit where they stand because their legs no longer remember how to hold them. Some laugh without sound. Some weep without shame. Some simply stare as the tanks roll past, unable to believe the shape of them. The wounded are carried out. The dead are left where they fell, marked and remembered. The town is shattered. Smoke drifts through streets that barely exist. Snow covers everything, softening nothing. Bastogne has been held. The German offensive breaks here and begins to unravel elsewhere. Momentum shifts. Plans collapse. What was meant to change the war becomes its final gamble, lost in the cold. Inside Bastogne, the men do not think in those terms. They think of friends who are gone. Of nights that seemed endless. Of foxholes, frozen boots, empty stomachs, and shells that landed too close. They think of how close they came to vanishing. They were never meant to win here. They were meant to be overrun, erased by weight of steel and weather. They were meant to become a footnote in a larger movement. Instead, they became an anchor. They held when surrounded. They endured when forgotten. They stood because standing was required of them in that moment, and for no other reason. The war would continue. There would be more fighting. More loss. More ground taken and lost again. But something had been said at Bastogne. A standard measured not in ground gained, but in ground refused. Not in victories claimed, but in collapse denied. When the guns finally fall silent, Bastogne remains what it always was. A small town at a crossroads. And a place where ordinary men showed how much pressure the human spirit can carry without breaking. They did not win the war. They became the standard.